Oh, did you see Anora? I just loved Anora. Anora was so good. I didn't like Anora. Let's just get it out of the way right now. I did not care for the movie Anora, all right? Did it have good acting? Yeah. Was it entertaining? Sure, I'll give it that, all right? But was it a deep movie with this mysterious deep ending and undertones of feminism? No, it was not, all right? People act like Anora was deep. It's not that deep, and that's what I want to talk about today, all right? So today we're going to talk about Sean Baker's 2024 film Anora. But first, let's roll the credits. All right. Hi there, my name is Shayna, and this is my channel. I talk about culture, Jewish themes and pop culture, and basically anything else I want to talk about. And if you don't like it, start your own channel. Okay, but please subscribe to my channel. Thank you, bye. All right, so Sean Baker's film Anora came out in 2024. It was getting good reception from audiences, and it was nominated and won many awards in the Oscars that season, including Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Original Screenplay. It deserves some of those awards. I don't know if it really deserves some of the others, okay? Now, when I first heard about this movie, I didn't know what it was about. I was wearing tinsel in my hair at the time just for fun, and people kept saying, Shayna, are you wearing that because of Anora? Oh, Anora was a good movie. Did you like it? Are you wearing tinsel in your hair because of Anora? And not knowing what Anora was, for some reason in my head I thought like, oh, is this like some kind of action film with a cool lady named Anora and she's like in outer space and it's like the future? I don't know why I thought that. Anyway, I learned that that's not what the film was, and then I decided to see it after it won all these Oscars. I wanted to see what all the buzz was about, and I went into it pretty fairly. There were aspects I liked about it and aspects I didn't, but before we get into that part, in case you haven't seen it, I'm just going to tell you real quick what the movie's about, alright? Major spoilers ahead. I mean, you gotta expect spoilers when you go to a YouTube channel where they talk about movies. Well, I mean, unless the channel explicitly says it's a non-spoiler channel, you know what you're getting into when you click on a little YouTube channel about movies, alright? There's gonna be spoilers. Alright, so Anora is about a lady named Anora, but she doesn't like her name, okay? She goes by Annie. Now, Anora/Annie, she is a adult entertainer, okay? And so she's working at her little adult entertainment club, and this young guy comes in, and he's Russian, and he's rich, and it turns out his parents are like oligarchs, and him and Annie hit it off, and then they hook up, and then, well, the guy does that thing where he's like, hey, why don't I marry the first stripper I've ever met? No, really, that's what happens. They decide to get married. And Annie, Anora, she's thinking like, this is gonna be my Cinderella story. I'm gonna finally not have to be an adult entertainer anymore. I'm gonna get to go and live this lavish life, okay? I can leave the fakakta life behind, and I can put on the Ritz, and I can live this better life. And you know, she's got like a rivalry with another stripper, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna leave that stripper behind and have a better life than her. But then the oligarch kid, his parents find out, and they're not too happy about this marriage, okay? And they're gonna try to annul it, and they're basically gonna try to take away this little fairy tale ending from Anora. Now let's break down what I liked about this movie and what I didn't. We'll start easy, okay? I know I'm gonna ruffle feathers with what I have to say. I'm very opinionated about this one, all right? The acting. Both Mikey Madison and Mark Edelstein, I'm not sure how to say his name, they both do a really great job, okay? First of all, I never heard of Mikey Madison before this movie, and then suddenly she's in it and she's all the buzz, you know? Everyone's like, oh, Mikey Madison, she did a little interview, oh, it's about Anora. And, well, I looked her up, and, not that this is all that matters, but she's very beautiful, okay? I think she is gorgeous, and she is, like, a Russian Jew, and I'm just glad that she's like out there in the world and acting in films and representing. It's great. I love her, all right? And on top of it looks, because like I said, that's not all that matters, she did a good job in the film, okay? She did a good job acting. I mean, she had to basically carry the film. The film is really about her. I mean, sure, there's other actors and they have to do a good job, but the film was really following her the whole time. She had to carry the whole thing and she did a good job, all right? She acted kind of spunky and tough. She was a fighter. She also had this, like, Brooklyn tough accent. Speaking of accents, imagine if someone did, like, a fake accent. Like, if they did this kind of, like, Queens, New York / Jersey / Boston / Rhode Island accent, and then they made, like, a puppet, and they did that. That'd be crazy, right? No, it'd be funny. You'd like it, right? Yeah, anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, she did a little accent. She carried the film. Good for her, okay? I got nothing bad to say about Mikey Madison. I like her, okay? And then Mark Edelstein, I can't say it. Mark did a good job playing Vanya, the, like, oligarch kid that marries Anora, you know? He acted like, well, kind of like an immature child boy. I don't know how to explain it. He was like a young adolescent, technically an adult, but he was, like, immature, and I think he played that role very well, so good job with the acting. Another thing I'll give the film, and maybe this is why people like it, maybe this is what people mean when they say it's deep, there was on the surface some class representation, right? Okay, so we got Anora, and she's just a little riff-raff street rat. Sorry, that's just like a reference to Aladdin. She's just like a tough Brooklyn gal, and she's like, you know, kind of lower class. She's struggling financially. She's in adult entertainment for a reason, all right? And then this rich guy comes in, and she's got this whole, like, fantasy dangling in front of her. She's gonna get to, like, leave and live this fairy tale ending, only for that to be threatened to be taken away and then ultimately taken away. And then there's this whole part after her boo runs away and he's missing. It's the whole, like, second half of the film. These henchmen are looking for her boo and they're with Anora, and they're all also, like, lower class. They're just, like, hired to work for the oligarchs. And it's just interesting because, like, they're trying to help the oligarchs find the son so that they can take away the marriage from Anora. And yet Anora and the henchmen have so much more in common class-wise. And so I guess maybe there's something there about, you know, class disparities and, I don't know, class loyalty. Something like that, yeah. I have to say, though, the whole part where, like, the muscles for hire come and they, like, tie up Anora, and then they untie her, and then they go looking for Vanya, whatever his name is. That part went on for, like, way too long, all right? I mean, it was very entertaining at first, and then it went on too long, and then it got entertaining again, and then it went on too long again, I have to say, all right? But that's basically all I liked about it. I liked the acting, and I guess I kind of could see, like, the class thing, but that's about as far as it goes in terms of depth. All right, are you ready? Don't come at me before I go into this. You might not agree with me, but I am just a puppet, and this is meant to be entertaining. If you don't agree with me, that's all right. You don't have to get angry, okay? Please don't get angry. I'm just a little puppet, okay? I just want to share my opinions about this. Okay. First, let's talk about feminism. Now, maybe this was just manufactured on the internet. Maybe it wasn't even real. I don't know. But I do think some people thought this was, like, somehow a feminist story. Maybe because Anora is, like, her own person, and, like, she sticks up for herself, and she's tough, and then even though she kind of, like, loses in the end, it's like, I don't know, I guess she stood up for herself. But also, it's like a story about her buying into this fairy tale ending, and then the fairy tale doesn't happen. What part of that is really, like, feminist? I don't know. That's about as feminist as it goes, is she's her own person and she's tough. And the whole movie's about her. This might be controversial, but I don't think that, like, a story about an adult entertainer lady is, like, inherently feminist. Now, don't come for me. A story about an adult entertainer could be feminist if they went, like, deeper, but I don't think they really go that deep into, like, her as a character or, like, even that deep into the class stuff, okay? So I don't know. It's like, where was the feminism? Was it, like, this part where she was, like, shaking her booty for the guy and she looked really hot? Is that the feminism? Is the feminism in the room with us right now? I mean, admittedly, she looked very hot doing that, so maybe it, like, hypnotized all of us and we were all like, wow, this is a good movie and she's so empowered. Or what about the part where she's, like, tied up for, like, way too long? It goes on for, like, at least 20 minutes to a half hour of her tied up and she's screaming and saying, untie me, and there's this part where we, like, close up in on her mouth. Is that the feminist part where we look at her orifice all close up? That's artistic because it's a close up of her orifice. Is that the part that's feminist? And then the director, Sean Baker. Now, hold on. I think people really like his movies. Admittedly, I haven't seen that many of his. And I don't really have an opinion on him as a person. So don't come for me, okay? I don't have an opinion on Sean Baker as a person. I have an opinion on other people's opinion of him. Once again, maybe this was, like, manufactured, but I feel like some people think Sean Baker is, like, a feminist director. And I just don't know where they're getting that. I'm not saying he's a bad guy or he's, like, anti-women. I'm just saying I don't know why other people think he's a feminist director. Besides the fact that, like, he sexualized Anora and, like, he did these shots compartmentalizing her body. Besides that part, I mean, there was this one thing that kind of stood out for me for some reason, okay? I was watching, like, a clip of Mikey Madison in an interview, and she told this little anecdote about on the set, and it was meant to be, like, a silly, funny anecdote, but I kind of was like, See, Mikey Madison said, you know, there's the scene where she's with the henchman, and they get out of the car, and they're looking for the guy, and it starts raining a little bit, and Mikey's hair started to get a little bit frizzy and curly. And she said that Sean Baker, the director, was like, oh no, what's happening? What's happening with your hair? Oh, I don't understand. I'm a guy. And she was like, ha ha, I'm Jewish and my hair curls. Ha ha. And it was told like a little funny anecdote, just like that. But I was here scratching my head thinking, people think this guy is a feminist, but if he's such a feminist, surely he must, like, know women and know that some women don't have actually naturally straight hair, and if they straighten it, and then humidity or water gets involved, it's gonna curl. Surely this feminist director must know a diverse group of women from different backgrounds and different hair types. Look, I'm just saying, I'm not criticizing him for, like, how he reacted to the hair. I guess that's kind of, like, cute and funny, I get it, but why are people saying he's, like, a feminist? Am I making this up? Did I just, like, read one person online saying he was a feminist and then I thought everyone thought he was? I don't know, but I'm just saying I don't get feminist vibes from him, and I don't think he directed it in a way that felt feministy to me. And there's a different film I'm going to compare this to, and you're going to see, all right? You're going to see. I know I'm going to lose some of you, all right? But just hold on, okay? There's more. Just give me a chance, all right? I feel like I'm not explaining this well, but I'm going to get to a point later on, and maybe it will all make sense then, okay? I just feel like, I don't know, it just didn't have that much depth. It was like this guy was like, hey, I'll make a movie about a stripper, and there will be some class elements to it. And then it'll be deep, right? Stripper plus class dynamics equals deep. And that brings me to my next point. It's not that deep. All right, I just don't think Anora was that deep, and let's talk about it more. Maybe one of the reasons why people think it's deep, besides just the whole class element, is the whole part with Igor, okay? Igor is one of the henchmen that has to, like, babysit Anora while they're looking for the guy, okay, the husband. And he has, like, a soft spot for Anora. He starts looking out for her. at the end of the film when Anora sticks up for herself but ultimately has to get divorced. Igor sticks up for her and says, hey, you guys should apologize to her or at least give her something, whatever. He stands up for her. And then he takes the ring, the engagement ring. He kind of steals it or takes it and he holds on to it so he can give it to Anora later. And he makes sure that she gets paid later. So I guess, that's deep. Oh, and don't forget, he doesn't... Yeah. Because there's a part where Anora's like, you could totally essay me, and that would be bad, but you would do it. And he doesn't do that, so I guess that's depth. There's also a part where, he's talking about the meaning of names. His name is Igor and what that means. And then he says Anora's name, it, means light or something like that, okay? And it's, interesting, because I guess, Anora never wants to be called Anora. She wants to be called Annie. And it's if her name means light, then is she hiding from her light? Is she not living up to the potential that she deserves to be living up to? Is that what Igor's trying to say? I don't know. I feel like they just kind of threw some things at the wall. They were just hey, let's have this henchman who's also lower class, and we'll have her kind of have a soft spot for some reason, and we'll have him be into names and tell her her meaning of her name. And then that will be deep, right? If we do henchman guy plus telling the meaning of the name plus kind of being nice to her, that's depth, right? That's a deep film. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It just, where's this all coming from? What's it all supposed to mean, all right? And then the ending of the film, what everyone I think talks about and thinks it's deep for this reason. Anora's in her car and she tries to have with Igor, and then he starts kissing her, and then she breaks down crying, and everyone says, oh, it's because he kissed her and that was intimacy instead of just... And then that's deep. But maybe that's not why she was crying. Maybe she just finally felt like she had a moment to process everything that happened in the last 48 hours, okay? She thought she was married and she was going to have a whole new life, and then that was taken away from her, and she was disrespected, and so much happened in 48 hours, and then she had this one moment where maybe she just felt a little bit safe, and she cried. That's how I interpret it. I guess it could also be the whole kissing part and how he, saw her as a person and not just a thing. I don't know, it just feels like deep meaning 101, okay? It feels like I'm 14 and this is deep. This is how we tell a deep story. Now hold on, okay? I feel like I didn't really explain myself that well, and that's on me, but I think what happened was I watched this movie and I felt disappointed, but I couldn't really figure out why. And then, months later, I watched a different movie. And the movie had a totally different story. I wasn't thinking about Anora when I put it on. But somewhere through this movie, the second half, something started happening that reminded me of Anora. There were a few elements that were similar. But the thing is, I really liked this other movie, and I thought it was deep. And I thought it did a really good job. And that's when I went, oh, I think this is what Anora was trying to do, but this film did it better. So let me tell you about this movie, Swallow, and what I liked about it, and why I think it kind of did what Anora was trying to do. All right, so Swallow is a film that came out in 2019, and it was directed by Carlo Maribella-Davis. Spoilers ahead again, major spoilers, okay? So, basically, the film is about a woman named Hunter, and she's maybe from humble beginnings, but she's married to a rich CEO kind of guy, and she's a little bit sad, and I guess her husband's kind of nice-ish, but also he's really not that nice. He kind of doesn't give her enough attention, and he's very controlling. He wants to have a baby even though she's not ready, stuff like that. And so she's basically just a stay-at-home wife, doesn't really have much going on, very lonely, kind of depressed, and she starts swallowing objects. Just like little objects around her home, like a little knick-knack here and there. She swallows them. And her husband finds out, and he's not happy about that, okay? That's the main story, but there's more to it. When he finds this out, he decides to see a therapist. Now, just so you know, I mentioned essay already, but this part is really about essay, so if that makes you uncomfortable, I don't know if you want to hear this part, okay? Okay, so Hunter, she's swallowing objects. Her husband doesn't like that. She goes to see a therapist, and in therapy, she talks about her upbringing, and she says she has a single mom, and she never met her father because her father is a random guy who SA'd her mother, got her pregnant, and went to prison for doing the SA. And so Hunter's like, yeah, that happened, and I carry a little picture of the guy who did it, who's technically my father, but I've never met him, and also it's not really a big deal, whatever. And her therapist is like, whoa, actually that seems like a very big deal, and I think maybe there's some unresolved stuff there, and that's probably what's creating a lot of issues for you right now, and might even be why you're swallowing objects. So now you're probably thinking, Shayna, what the heck does this have to do with Anora? Alright, this lady swallowing objects and this thing happened in her past with her dad. What's that have to do with anything? Okay, well, the second half of the movie is where it all happened, okay? This is where I think there's similar things happening to Anora. Okay, so after therapy, 'cause she still has to be home alone a lot while the hubby's at work, the husband hires this Syrian tough guy to look after the wife while she's home alone and make sure that she doesn't swallow objects. So he's this tough guy named Louie, okay? So Louie, the Syrian guy, is supposed to keep an eye on Hunter. Does that sound familiar? A muscle for hire has to watch over a woman who's being a nuisance for the other men. That's when I started to go, this seems familiar. And Louie doesn't really like Hunter at first. I think he assumes she's just a rich lady because her husband's rich. But she really comes from more humble-ish beginnings. So he doesn't really like her at first, okay? But here's where things change. Hunter finds out that her husband has bribed the therapist so that the therapist will tell him everything that she's talking about in therapy. Talk about both a HIPAA violation and just a breach of trust on the husband's end, right? That's horrible. So Hunter figures this out. She overhears something. She realizes that he's breached her trust and, all that. And she freaks out and she ends up swallowing a screwdriver. And it's really bad. And Louie finds her and freaks out. And then she goes to the hospital. And when she comes back from the hospital, her husband and the controlling in-laws as well, they want her to go to a little institution for a little while and then come back. And again, they really want her to have a baby. And this is where she realizes that she's basically a prisoner. She is in an abusive relationship. Her husband is controlling. She's not going to really have say in her life, and she's miserable. And you know what? Louie realizes this too. He feels bad. He realizes, this poor lady, she's not in a good situation. So what does he do? Kind of like Igor, he now tries to help her. So when they're waiting for her to come out to get in the car, she says she has to go to the bathroom, he stalls them, he distracts them, he stalls them so that Hunter can get away. And Hunter drives away and she goes to a motel and she escapes. And that's all the role that Louie plays. It's less than what Igor did, but it was a big help. And here's where I think it's different than Anora, and here's where I think they did it right. Hunter goes to a motel, and then she calls her mother so she can maybe stay with her. And then that's when we realize her mother kind of sucks, because her mother's like, oh, I'd love to take you in, but I won't. And then it's implied that there's other children that are maybe Hunter's half-siblings. I think what they were implying is that Hunter was the one child that was, conceived as a result of the essay. And then the other children were like planned children. And I think the mother kind of like holds that against her own daughter, even though it's not her fault. So Hunter's on her own. And what does she do after this? She tracks down her biological father, the guy that essayed her mother. And this part's really trippy, okay? She finds his home, and it's full of people because they're having a birthday party. And it turns out the guy that's her father, the one that went to prison, he has a wife and like a child. And so first she shows up pretending she's part of the party. She's like a parent that's there for the birthday. But then they have a moment alone in the kitchen and she confronts him and she reveals that she's his daughter. And he knows who she is now. He knows what she's talking about. Because, you know, he went to prison for all of that. And so basically he shares that he went to prison. I think he got like, you know, his butt kicked and it was awful. And he turned his life around. Like after he left prison, he was like, oh boy, I gotta stop being terrible and make some changes. And I guess he felt like shame about what he did. So he actually turned his life around. And I think he may have because, you know, his wife seemed nice. He has a kid. It seemed like he did turn his life around. And he felt bad about what he did. And then emotionally, Hunter asks if like he hates her or is embarrassed by her, or if she thinks that like she is like him, and he says no, you know, he's not embarrassed. He doesn't think she's like him either. And I guess she gets a closure that way, and she leaves. And then, because, you know, she wants to start over and not be held behind by her, like, abusive husband, she makes the choice to go to an abortion clinic, and she gets a pill, and then she goes to a mall to take the pill, and we assume she's having an abortion. And the film ends with her going to the bathroom. She's in a stall, and we're seeing the bathroom, and as the credits roll, women are coming and going. They're doing their makeup. It's kind of like a cool little ending. And you know what? I loved this film. Loved it. I thought it was so deep. Because when it first started out, you know, Hunter kind of seemed like boring and like she didn't have a personality. And when she was swallowing objects, you were like, what's that about? Why is she doing that? That's weird. But then as it went on, we learned about her trauma. We learned that like not only did this thing happen in her childhood that impacted her, but also she's in an abusive relationship where she has no control. And so the swallowing is like the one way that she has control in her life, even though it's detrimental to her. It's like just something compulsive she does so she can feel in control. And then we start to learn more about her. And then she has like a backbone and stands up for herself. And even though she gets some help from the way, which is very sweet, by the way, she basically confronts her trauma herself. She goes and finds the guy and confronts him. And then she chooses to have an abortion. She changes her life herself. And I think it's beautiful and I think it's feminist. I think that was a feminist film. I think it had depth. It's something I keep thinking about from time to time. I just remember the movie every now and then. I think Anora was kind of trying to do that, but it didn't quite do it. I don't think Anora made as many decisions for herself. She kind of just naively hoped that like a fairy tale would happen, and then it didn't. And that's okay if it ends that way. Sometimes a film is about learning these hard truths, but I don't think that makes it deep, and I don't think it makes it feminist. And you know what? The director of Swallow is a man. When I was watching this film, I didn't notice who the director was, and I thought, oh wow, maybe a woman directed this because it just feels so feminist. And then I looked it up, and it turned out it was a man, and I was like, oh wow, men can direct feminist films. Do you see what I'm saying, all right? Now, if you like Anora, that's okay. It's an entertaining film. Mikey Madison did a great job. It's fun, okay? It's a fun movie, I get it. I'm just saying I couldn't put my finger on it. Then I watched Swallow and I was like, oh wow, this is what everyone's saying Anora is. This is it. Swallow. Great movie. Well, that's all I have for you, okay? I rambled a lot. You probably don't agree with anything I said. If there's anything you can take away though, please watch the film Swallow. I think it's really good. Don't come after me. Remember, I said this is just for fun. This is just entertaining. I'm a puppet. Don't write mean comments, please. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. Leave a nice comment. If you didn't like it, leave a nice comment anyway, because why not? You were entertained, okay? I know you were. You're stewing there and you're entertained while you're stewing. And please subscribe to my channel. It takes a lot of effort to make these videos. Like a lot of effort. Help the channel grow. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching this. You're wonderful. I'm fabulous. Everything's good. All right, bye.